And done. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We're back. We're back again.
What is this? Like, is this a record for us? Is this like
It
three or
is.
four in a row?
I know it is. It's crazy, and people are going to be really happy because of the fact that they're pretty much going to get a podcast like back to back from each other because I'm behind. I haven't even got the video uploaded of the past podcast yet, but it's okay. It's something I can do. Work for in the morning.
Yeah.
I got nothing but physical therapy tomorrow, so
nice.
Work on that. Get that taken care of.
Woohoo! I'll be traveling to see my people, and we will be, for those of you that hear this before Friday, we will be at First Friday in all our spooky glory.
Spoopy.
Talking about Scream. Yeah. Scream, the hottest hot in Loudoun County, Virginia.
How about this?
Yeah.
I'll go ahead and roll a trailer for that. So if you're, if you're listening to this, to see the trailer, you're going to have to go to the YouTube channel to be able to see it. So with that, we're going to roll the trailer.
Roll that beautiful bean footage. ScreamLoco.com. I know, it's great.
I love that though. I love that. It's
Loco.
Scream Loco. Loudoun County, but Loco.
You will be
good marketing.
Yep. We got some smart people.
We do. You guys do. You guys got some really smart people up in there. But yeah, I'm excited for it because I will actually be able to walk.
Let's hope
during that time. I don't know if I'll be able to run, so I guess that kind of counterproductive. But I'll have a cane, so I can beat people.
Oh, please don't beat the mutants. They're already whooped up on enough.
Oh, Danielle, I'm aiming for you, bud.
The cane. We're freezing.
You're freezing, and I'm not.
Frozen freezing.
All right, well, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to jump into this, but before we get started, I am going to provide a disclaimer here in the description of this podcast and then of the video. There will be a link to a Facebook page. I do stress discretion when going through this Facebook page. Some photos that you will see on there can be a little unsettling. So I do, stress caution. If you're underage or any of that, please use caution when going to this Facebook page. But we do, highly suggest going to this Facebook page to give support and love. Or if you know anything about this case that we are going to be talking about here. But Danielle, do you want to jump into it in as far as the details of this?
Yeah, let's get to it. So, this case, a friend brought to me a couple months ago and said, "Did you know about this case? Because it happened basically in your backyard." And I was like, "Wait, what?" And it's a cold case. What is going on? So, it's one of our little known things that we do at ParaChills, which is try and dig into cold cases and see if there's anything that we can do to help with our time and our reach. So, with that, this case is about Miss Jaleayah Davis. Um, at the age of 20, she left home to go out with some friends. And she didn't know these friends very well, but they were new friends, her and this one girl. And they went out and they had a good time at a friend's house party, then a local bar. And then at some point in the evening, in the early wee hours of the next morning, there was an altercation to which Jaleayah decided she was no longer going to spend the night at her friend's house and she wanted to go home. And she called her sister, Tabby, to pick her up. And then she made a couple more phone calls to Tabby, changing the location, crying, very upset, asking her to hurry. And then there was a 911 call about less than 25 minutes later that a body was found on the highway. And when Tabby and her friend were going to get Jaleayah, they actually came up to the crime scene and were stopped. And when she got out, she had this super sick feeling. And when she asked the cops what had happened, all they told her was that it was an African American female wearing a white pea coat, which to me seems like a lot of information to give somebody that just happens up on the scene. But she knew right away then with that description that it was probably her sister. So she called her mom and her grandfather, who also came to the scene. Now,
Well, I'll
that's
stop you
the.
right there because just without giving out too much, but
Uh-huh.
as far as like, what I've seen from like the Facebook post and everything like that, I can actually understand why the police officers gave that description because of the fact of the matter is that, unfortunately, this individual was very, you know, you would not be able to recognize this individual at all. So to have that description, so like if anybody did come up or anything like that, it was pretty much it's a police officer taking a shot in the dark. But you know they they'll give that description just in case if that person just happened to know an individual that was dressed in this clothing, that this on that night. So, and in this aspect, he hit the nail on the head.
Mhm.
Then her sister pulled up and the police officer gave the description, and you know it instantly clicked.
So, that's the high level of our story. Catbutt is joining us um, behind the scenes at the moment, sniffing,
Yes.
checking it out. And just so you know, as hello, just as Wyatt mentioned, there is a Facebook page that her family has started many years ago because this actually happened in 2011 and November 19th, 2011. And so it
Oh
is
my.
It's Justice for Jaleayah, and I'll spell it for you, but we can add it in the details too below. But it's Jaleayah.
Well, I
Not
mean,
to be.
it's going to be the title of the podcast. So.
Oh, very true, very true. So there's another one though that has her last name included, and that one is just sort of a Good Samaritan started another Facebook page. That one is not directly affiliated with the family though. So the Justice for Jaleayah, they've got thousands of viewers for that one. And so go there, show some support. If you can stomach it, there are the actual crime scene photos. There are at least 120 pages of witness testimony, police testimony, family testimony. She basically put up everything that she had, the mom did, of the proof, pictures of the vehicle. So why I gave you the high level, right? So let me dig down a little deeper and give you the dirt. So she goes out to the friend's house and she goes over early. Her and her friend, her name is Kristen Bechtold, and her and Kristen get ready at Kristen's house. They think they might have had like some pregame beverages. Actually, I believe Kristen said that they did have a couple pregame beverages while they were getting ready and, doing their hair and all that stuff, which is not uncommon for girls to do sometimes. And so then they went to the house of a friend of Kristen's that Jaleayah kind of only knew in passing. They got there, I believe, I want to say around 8ish. And they did the house party thing. And then they decided that they wanted to go to a bar called the Nip and Q, which was a pool hall. Funny enough, it's a pool hall now, but it is not the same pool hall. It's a different pool hall now. And this pool hall and this friend's house is located in Parkersburg, West Virginia, which is actually only about 10-15 minutes from where I live. So they go to this bar. There are stories, accounts of Jaleayah having a hard time standing, that she had been very intoxicated. There, according to Kristen, she drank a whole bottle of vodka. Okay, when you see these pictures of this girl, you will see that she is maybe 110 pounds soaking wet.
She would have blacked out by then. But
There's
well, I can't say that because I've seen some tiny girls put away some liquor and still be standing.
And they said, I believe she also then said something about somewhere between the neighborhood of 15 and 18 shots of vodka. And I don't know, because that's kind of a relative thing. Is it a swig out of the bottle? Was it in a shot glass? What kind of
Yeah.
glass? But she was putting away some liquor. And a friend, a mutual friend of theirs, was an old boyfriend of Jaleayah's, actually ran into her and did say it looked like she was having a hard time walking in her shoes. She was a little wobbly. So they get in the car, back in the one of the boys drove. So they get back into his car, and some kind of altercation happens. There's a bit of a discussion. They think it might have stemmed around the fact that Jaleayah was talking to one of the other girls that was in the group with them. Her name is Katie Nelson. Katie's ex-boyfriend was at this bar, and that happened to be the boy that Jaleayah was speaking to, and they said she was flirting with him. And Kristen had a problem with that because she didn't think that was very nice of Jaleayah to be flirting with a friend's ex-boyfriend.
She's
Turns out
drunk.
that, well, yes, and it turns out that Jaleayah actually knows this boy from many years ago prior to this. So they were acquaintances or friends. I think they were actually friends. And I guess because the other group didn't know her very well, they didn't know that she was good friends with this guy. So that may have been what got this whole altercation started between her and Kristen.
Assumptions.
So, yes. So, about 3ish in the morning, they roll up to the boys' house that had the house party, and they get into it, and Jaleayah says, "I'm just going home. I want to go back to my car. I'm just going to go home." So the story goes that they take her back to Freddie's house. Freddie is the boy that had the house party. And they're fighting over keys because apparently Kristen has taken Jaleah's keys because she says she was worried that she was going to drive and she was very intoxicated. So she took her keys. So she's got Jaleah's keys. Jaleayah wants her keys back. There's bickering. Kristen says, "I will give you back your keys if you call your sister to come and get you and you promise you won't drive." So about 3:23, Jaleayah calls Tabi, her sister, and asks her, and this is in the morning, asks her to pick her up at a gas station that is in Parkersburg, near where they're at. And she says, "Sure, yeah, I got to get dressed and get in the car or whatever." And it's a good at least 20 minutes. Now, her sister is in Marietta, Ohio, which is actually where I'm moving to. So I know where this is also. And it's super close, but it's over the river and around some woods. And so it takes a minute, even though they're neighboring-ish towns. So
The only thing missing from that description was Grandma's house.
I know, right? So she goes to pick up Jaleayah. She says while she's on the phone with Jaleayah, she hears her say, "Kristen, give me back my keys." And so there's like an argument, and she hears Kristen's voice, and so she knows that at 3:23, Kristen and Jaleayah are fighting over her car keys. So she hangs up. Jaleayah calls Tabi back a few minutes later and says, "Okay, never mind. Can you meet me at the rest stop, the Williamstown, West Virginia rest stop?" So where that is north, just north of the gas station that she was going to, and closer to Marietta. So she's basically saying this will take probably 10 minutes off your drive. And so meet me there. And of course, I'm thinking as I'm hearing all this, she's not supposed to be driving. So how is she getting there? She tells her sister during that phone call that she's on the interstate. So so I'm just gonna throw this out there real quick for y'all to noodle over. She's on the interstate. Who's she on the interstate with? Who's driving? Where's her car? Okay, so we have all that, right? You're thinking on those. So then she calls Tabi back a few minutes later and is begging her sister to hurry. When she's very upset, when Tabi asks her what's wrong, she says, it's a long story. I'll tell you when you get here. Just hurry. And so she's super upset. So then at 3:48 a.m., now this is approximately 25 minutes from the first time Jaleayah calls Tabi. A truck driver calls 911 and says, I think there's dead animal or something in the road, but it's right in the middle of the fast lane, and it might be a body, but I'm not really sure. Um, so this gentleman goes down and he says, I gotta confirm, and he's on the phone with the 911. Here's the other thing too. The transcripts of these 911 calls are also available, and this one is just heartbreaking because this guy is
Hmm.
like, oh gosh, I think it's a body. I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna confirm it. But oh gosh, it's a body. And and so he's like walking back towards it, and he's like, oh, like you hear him go, oh, a truck just hit her or hit it. And I'm trying to flag it down. Like he was trying to use his flashlight on his phone to get the this is at 3 in the morning, right? So there shouldn't be a ton of traffic, but that's probably when truck drivers are driving. He's
Yeah.
trying to get everybody out of the fast lane to go around this thing he sees. And then he gets up to it and realizes it is a body. And he is just mortified. And she's like, turn around, don't look at it. But a few other people stopped and pulled over, and they actually formed a little circle around her with lights to get people out of the way until the cops could come. Um, Meanwhile, Tabby is en route from Marietta to this rest stop, and she comes upon the accident. And she has a bad feeling. And she gets out of the car and she goes up to the cop. And she's like, what's going on? I'm looking for my sister. She's supposed to be, just past here, blah, blah. And it turns out it was her sister. She said, the cop said, it was an African American woman wearing a white peacoat. And she just knew from there that that was Jaleayah, because that was what she was wearing when she left the house. So she calls her mother and her grandfather, and they come to the scene. Um, and it is a mess, and the craziness just begins from there. Okay, so it's so hard to keep this high level because if I go too low, it's like nitty gritty, all kinds of craziness. Um, so it really, if you're interested, go to the Facebook page, read all of the documentation, read her. She tries very hard actually to kind of give details that are not biased. I
Yes,
mean,
she very much does.
she definitely has her opinion, don't get me wrong, but when she is showing you the evidence, she's trying to walk you through it as opposed to like pointing a ton of fingers.
Yeah,
Um,
she definitely keeps it in layman's term for you as well. And
yes.
I appreciate that. Because when I was reading it through it and all that, it was just a little bit that I was reading. I was This is absolutely insane. The photos that I saw, but in each photo, she provides a description of what you're looking at. So that way you have a little bit more context to be able to make your own judgment onto it. But it is rightfully insane, just
Yeah.
everything.
Yes. And so they pull up to the scene, and from the right side of the road to the fast lane, and it's 3-lane highway right
Yeah, it's a
there.
3-lane highway.
Yeah. Is blood, brain matter, um, tire marks. It's just a mess. She is found in the fast lane with a broken leg. She's half naked. So from the waist down, she is from the waist up, I'm sorry, she has no clothes. Her right breast has been removed, and the majority of her head is missing. So she didn't get completely decapitated, but it took about 2/3 of her head off. And just a mess. Now, here's where it gets real interesting. The guardrail down the way, across 3 lanes of traffic, neatly folded. Did you hear that, folks? Neatly folded are Tabby's clothes. And not only was it neatly folded, but it was in reverse order of what you would think if somebody was losing their clothes in a car accident, how they might come off and be left, right? So her bra is the closest thing to the guardrail, then her shirt, then her pea coat. And it's one laid on the other, just like that, on the guardrail. Just sitting there, covered in blood. Also, after the fact, too, her grandfather actually stayed. Well, I don't remember. He may have come back. I think the cops shoot him away, but I think he may have come back because he wanted to take a look at everything and take pictures. So he did that. Well, he also noticed on the other side of the guardrail, on the grass side, was her hood that goes to the pea coat. It was down in the kind of the culvert area. So he actually, picked it up with something, not his hands, and put it in his trunk and drove it and the coat, shirt, and pea coat, because the cops left it on the guardrail for some reason. After the fact, it was just sitting there. So he takes this stuff to the police station. So now we've got her there. Various places along guardrail and the road are brain matter and blood. But what it looks like is there are clear, dark acceleration marks on the shoulder of the road. And there's some blood and stuff there by them. And they kind of skid off into the road, and they kind of go in the direction of the fast lane and up a bit. So there's that. Then they say about a quarter of a mile away, uphill-ish from her is her car. It's kind of just touching the guardrail, and it's running, and the doors are locked. And her keys are in the ignition. And that's, where it gets really weird. As if it's not weird enough. So they're surmising she's gotten into an accident, right, in her own car. The whole right side of her car looks like it's been rubbed up against a guardrail. It's dented at the headlight of the right side, and then it's kind of dented in along the passenger door and back towards the back of the car. But other than that, it actually has pretty minimal damage for a vehicle
that's going in a fast lane, and that would cause an accident like this.
And they're claiming that she drove it by herself. Now, originally, you can read the transcripts, right? Originally, the cops say that they think that she was hit by her own car and possibly pinned to and drug along the guardrail. That was more than one police officer statement. But somehow, a few days later, it actually took them 16 months, and they closed the case after that, saying that it was an alcohol-related traffic accident. But this is what they think happened. After they say that she was driving alone without her seatbelt on, that she hit the guardrail, then flew, ready? flew from the driver's seat across the passenger seat and out the passenger window. However, there's no blood, there's no hair, there's no articles of her clothing, there are no pieces of any evidence that corroborate that she went out that window and that she broke that window and that she went out of it. But it was broken out for sure. There was also a crack, like one of those spider cracks on the windshield on the passenger side from the inside. So they can tell when a windshield has impact and spiders,
the impact hit.
whether or not it was inside or outside the car. So they're saying that this impact on the passenger side windshield is from the inside. Something hit it from the inside. So they never really explain that. So Jaleayah flies from the driver's side out the passenger side. Then she flips up onto the roof, kind of does like a Teen Wolf situation up on the roof, and then somehow spins around and then goes down the back of her vehicle, leaving some brain matter on the trunk. And then
on the hood as well.
And yes, a little bit on the hood, on the back, and then on the roof on the back, then on the trunk lid, and kind of down. Then somehow ends up on the passengers. In the fast lane, and her car drives. I guess that's how they think it's locked, because she's been in it and she never got it. Nobody got out. So that's why it's locked. They go and they interview. So we'll leave that there. That's the crime scene. So they go and they find the people that she's supposedly with. And they claim that they dropped her off, and that they thought she was waiting for Tabby to pick her up there. And she claims that at that time of the accident, Kristen, Freddie, and a girl named Katie Nelson, she's the girl whose ex-boyfriend Jaleayah was talking to.
Yeah.
That the three of them went to McDonald's. The CCTV footage timestamp says that they were at the drive-through window picking out the food, getting the food at 3:32 a.m. So I'm just going to go back and review my notes. 3:23 was supposedly when Tabby got the phone call from Jaleayah asking her to pick her up, when she heard her telling Kristen, "Give me my keys." 3:23. But yet she says that at 3:22, she was in Freddie's car without Jaleayah getting McDonald's. The only person you can see on the CCTV camera is the driver, which is indeed Freddie. So that really takes him out of
the equation completely.
Being involved. Now, does he know something he's not saying? Maybe. But you can't tell, and you can tell that there's someone in the back seat and that there's somebody on the passenger side. But you can't tell who's who or who it is. So that's a little interesting. Not only that, but Jaleayah had this. There's a picture of it on the Facebook page. This like bedazzled J keychain that Tabby gave her for her birthday, and she never took it off for anything. Yada yada yada. Well, Kristen, it comes to find out, Kristen has this J keychain for some reason. She originally told cops that that Jaleayah gave it to her. I'm like, does Kristen have a J and I don't know how to spell? Like, I don't understand. And even if she was like, "Oh, you're my great friend because I've been drinking and you're so awesome," and here's my bejeweled keychain. I mean,
I highly doubt that
I
because
I have to
just in the
say, this is a special
situation, like
keychain.
the first person that she called was her sister.
Right.
So obviously, even being intoxicated and, to the point, that she was, that she still had the sense that the first person that she's going to call to come help her is her sister. So obviously that just tells you that her sister is a very important person to her. So I don't think she's just going to up and give something that her sister gave her away, even if she
Right.
was intoxicated.
Right. So, and it took her months to turn it over to the cops. I think that somehow in the struggle over her keys, she ended up with the J,
Has a possibility too.
which there's no, I don't think anybody is contesting that there was not a scuffle over the keys because they didn't want her to drive, and they made her call Tabby to come and get her. So I'm much more by that than uh, that Jaleayah gave her the keychain outright. Um, so here we go into the nitty gritty, right? So they couldn't find Kristen. Oh, let me give you the big old surprise of this whole thing. Kristen, Freddie, and Katie are all family members of, at that time, retired or current Parkersburg Police Department cops. Just another thing for you to put in your database there. So when they go to Kristen's house, they're told she's not there, even though there's a car. It was cold, and all the other cars but one are covered in frost. So one has clearly been driven recently, but she's not there. Eventually, she comes in 3 days later. She comes into the police station with a lawyer. She's the only one that got a lawyer. She got the lawyer 12 hours after the accident. Um, and she says, again, she took her to her house, to the house where the car was, I should say, and made her call her sister. But then here's the thing, you're so concerned. You gave the drunk girl her car keys. And once she called her sister, you were like, okay, now we're going to go to McDonald's? Why would you leave a drunk person alone in their own car with their car keys and think that they were just going to sit there? I'm not sure. Another hypothetical. So that's what she says happened. But again, let me remind you of the times, right? 3:32 is the timestamp on the CCTV footage of Freddie's car at McDonald's. But 3:23 is the phone call where Tabby distinctly hears Kristen in the background, them scuffling over her car keys. So she says she doesn't know what happened. Nobody knows what happened. Now, the cops have that theory of the whole, she had no seatbelt on, so she went flying out across her own car in it and up over and did some kind of acrobatics that ended up on the hood and then the roof and then the back of the car. And they say they pulled the data. So here's their other point, the police. They pulled the data from cars have a black box like airplanes do when they have these computer components in them. And they have ones that register like seat belts, whether or not the alarms were going off and whatever. The passenger indicator. So cars now have the little light that
They'll
comes
let you know if
on.
somebody's sitting in it or not, if the seatbelt's not on.
Right. And well, what they are saying is that that is their proof that there was no one sitting in the passenger seat, because the indicator light did not come on. And then they said, and they know she didn't have her seatbelt on because the indicator for that from the driver's side either indicated the opposite or it showed that there was no seatbelt in position. Well, Jaleayah bought this car used, and it had been in an accident already, and it had faulty airbags. That was one of the things. And then they actually had, it was a Kia, so they actually had a Kia representative come and it analyzed the car. And it turns out that there was an issue with the passenger side signal, that it was not working properly, that it was not registering. In fact, if somebody was sitting in the seat, it wasn't registering whether or not somebody was sitting there. So you can't actually prove that there was no passenger riding in that car before the accident because the sensors were all off and wrong. Uh, and the dude from Kia was able to corroborate that, and that letter is also in the package of papers on the Facebook page. So what is the possibility that perhaps Kristen said, fine, I will drive you to the gas station, and we'll wait for your sister there. Or I will drive you to that, the rest stop in Williamstown, and then you can wait for your sister there. Leave your car there. It's a great place. It's a rest stop, so there's big places to leave your car and, park and sleep and whatever. And so that's a good, safe place for a car to be left overnight. And then perhaps a little argument ensues while something's going on. Perhaps she tells Kristen to pull over. She wants out of the car. Perhaps she tries to get out of the car. Who knows, right? I mean, you drink and you do stupid things. Somehow, Jaleayah ends up outside the car, near a guardrail. Something happens, and the car is accelerated into Jaleayah, who then gets hit and pushed along the guardrail. And if you look at the video, her father actually takes a video of the guardrail, which one is like first impact and then I think second impact. And it's like those, if you look behind a guardrail, it has like the wood bumper, and it has like a metal thing that goes over it. So it's kind of like this, and then this is the part that faces the road. There's actually brain matter and blood here on the outside. Like her head was over and whacking. It sounds so bad. And bumping up against the wood and metal bumper part.
Yeah.
He takes video and illustrates that. Now you can't, he did this several days later, I think, so you can't quite see a lot of the stuff, but he's kind of describing what he saw, and walking it along the way. And that because there is blood on the undercarriage, the thought is that perhaps she got stuck under the car and was drug to the fast lane or into the road somewhere. And their attempt to free her from the car, they're yanking on her sleeves, or she yanking on her sleeves, pulling, and out comes the jacket, off comes the shirt. Okay, off comes the bra, perhaps. And then they, instead of just leaving it there, they put it neatly on the guardrail. Then they leave her in the road, drive the car down a bit. Freddie comes and picks her up. Somebody comes and picks her up, takes her home.
Yeah, because here's my standpoint on it, just by looking at the photos that I just recently saw, and especially with the trunk. So obviously it was. Why, Danielle? Why are you hitting buttons? Now you're muted.
I'm sorry. I was trying to blow my nose, and I didn't want people to see me blow my nose again.
So you just did it on screen,
so
just
I
big version of you.
so I just decided they should see just me.
Yeah,
No, wrong button.
yeah. So with this, um, obviously by what you said, in my standpoint is that at some point she ended up behind the vehicle, and the vehicle backed into her because she and it backed into her with force to where her initial head probably hit the roof and was drugged back. And then, so when the takeoff point, she probably, and as she was sliding down, she got stuck under and then dragged when they tried pulling out.
Mm-hmm.
And, they realized this. And then, like you said, as they were trying to get her unstuck, um, at that point, probably, ended up taking off her jacket, and, ended up like, probably taking off her shirt and all that stuff too. And some aspect, somebody had to take off the top of her clothing, because of the fact of the matter is, there's no way it's just going to be neatly, sitting there unless somebody else did it. You
Mm-hmm.
know, she's not going to do it, if she's
Right.
stuck
Let
underneath of
me
a car.
let me take all my own top off and then wander
Yeah.
out in the middle of the road and get hit by some trucks.
Yeah. So I'm thinking, like, as far as basically she probably got hit and skidded under, and they probably trying to get her out of it. That failed. So the next course of action would be, okay, well, let's, go as fast as we can out of here, and then that'll knock her loose. So,
Mm-hmm.
and then on when doing that is probably in the instance during that process, you said that, her, one of her breasts was missing. So there could have been a possibility that, you know, she stuck underneath of the tire, and the tire could have worn it off in that process of skidding out. And when she finally got loose, she basically, skipped into the fast lane, into pretty much like the middle of traffic
Mm-hmm.
from there. So it doesn't make sense that her vehicle would be further up the road from where her body was and everything. That makes no sense whatsoever. So obviously, and it's hard to say, you know, like I'm not the type of person to pass accusations on somebody, without, really knowing the full story onto it. But it does raise speculations more that, Kirsten would be the main suspect of this, or anybody that was involved in this altercation during that night. Now, granted, Kirsten, she if she didn't do it, then she was smart to lawyer up 12 minutes after, due to the fact of the matter is that they did have an altercation. She knew that was going to get out.
Mm-hmm.
So, she wanted to make sure that, she had her protection, and then she didn't fuck up on anything, and say something that may incriminate her if she didn't do anything. Now, it kind of is a double-edged sword, because it also kind of really incriminates you a little bit more that you're the only person that lawyered up,
Right.
you know, and nobody else did. Now, Freddie, obviously, he we can tell that his hands are clean now. As far as what he may know, could be a little bit more, um, or it could be just something that, to like, hey, you know, go out and get, us some McDonald's. And they just use that as a cover story. Um, him going out to get McDonald's as a cover story for it. But I don't know. I don't, it's weird because I don't think any of it was intentional. I don't think it was, premeditated in the sense. I
Mm-hmm.
think, something horrible happened and the people involved with it, instead of owning up to what happened, are trying to cover themselves up so that way they don't get in trouble. Um, and I think, a situation happened and, she was, probably drunk and, in that sense, probably got into an altercation in the car. Jalen may have, tried to like grab the steering wheel,
Mm-hmm.
um, and which caused, the car to swerve off, which would, be the cause of minimum damage to it, swerved off the road, person driving, decelerated, applied the brakes, scraped up against the other guardrail, ended up, breaking a window in that aspect. Jalen's head could have hit the window,
Mm-hmm.
um, or something could have hit the window in the process, could have been like a phone or anything, because a spider crack, like all it takes is just like, just one little point to hit that and calls it the spider. Obviously it wasn't too bad because the entire window didn't shatter out
Mm-hmm.
in that aspect. So I think that could have happened. And when so Jalen would have gotten out of the vehicle to remove herself from the situation because obviously she did not want to be in the vehicle at all. So she was able to get herself out of the vehicle. In that process, when she was out of the vehicle, most likely what happened is that the person driving put it in reverse to try to catch up to her, didn't realize how close she was, ended up hitting her, and her getting stuck underneath of the vehicle, and then them, freaking out and trying to get her out, and then just poor decisions after that
Mm-hmm.
completely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and at first I was thinking, well, maybe it was a stranger. Like she stopped at that gas station and was waiting for her sister, and somebody hopped in her car and made her drive, and drove away with her in it. And so she was fighting like a stranger driving her car, except for the fact that she
Stranger would have
called
literally called her sister.
she
A stranger,
called her sister two more times and
yeah, a
never once said
stranger would
anything
not.
about like that. So
So I think during the
so I
last
think she
phone
knew
call,
who was in the car with her.
that was made to her sister, with like, the freak out the ball and everything, I think that was basically, in a sense, was basically the altercation was in the, like probably, in the middle of the altercation, and just, making sure that her sister was close by, figure out, and then due to the fact that, Jalen was, intoxicated, might have made a poor choice, to try to get the vehicle to stop, pull over. In her mind, she may not have just felt safe in that situation.
Mhm.
She probably didn't think that the person who was driving was going to, take her to where she needed to go. Somewheres in some way, this poor girl feared for her life, feared for her safety. And in this situation, ended up worse than what it could have been.
Mhm.
And it really kind of boils down to is, and the thing is, it's really like all of this really could have been prevented if one person did not make an assumption,
Mhm.
and it escalated everything to where these events happen. Really, all it needed to take is one person needed to go to the other one, just clarify, be like, hey, how do you know this person? Like,
Mhm.
and really just kind of, sum it up. Obviously, you know that the girl was drunk. You know,
Right.
you don't you don't go attacking somebody that's drunk because they don't understand. They're not able to. So then, they're going to get defensive, or they're going to get emotional, or however it is. Nobody is a logical mind when they're intoxicated in any way,
Mm-hmm.
shape, or form. Especially if you're saying like, oh well, she's not able. She was hardly able to walk or anything like that. Obviously, this poor girl is not in the right mind to really defend herself in any way, or anything that she says is going to be completely ridiculous and may not be exactly what she means in the first place. So,
Mm-hmm.
we always say this: be kind to others, show empathy, show it really, in any aspect. Is this poor girl could still be alive today if somebody didn't want to be a jealous little bitch about
Right.
things. And it
Right.
sucks. And it's horrible. It hurts my heart that this family has to go through that. The fact that her sister pulled up on the crime scene and, instantly, you know, knew in her heart, in her gut, that something bad happened. And when she got that clarification from the police officer, you know, that sucks. That's the worst thing possible. You didn't get a phone call, you didn't get anything. You found out randomly on your own.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's
Like
basically,
mom,
walking
mom,
in to
mom came
somebody.
up. Mom came up on the scene, and there was a white sheet over part of her
Part of
remains,
her, yeah, part.
and
I'll
she
say it,
says,
it's part of her head. It was part of her head. They,
"Well," and
it-
she says, "There's no way that that's a body under there. It's not big enough." Like that was her whole thought process because yeah, her part of her head's over here and some of her body is over here and all distorted. It had been hit at least once because the truck driver saw
yeah.
a truck hit it. So,
And I will say this
um,
is, whatever the truck driver that was on the scene, um, and this is another thing that sucks too, is the truck driver actually, I don't know if it was the truck driver that stopped or if it's the truck that hit the body onto it, but I know one of them had his son riding with him.
that's the one that called.
Okay, so that was the one. So and
Yeah,
that's
because
another thing
he
too.
parked his truck and then the son stayed in the truck and he walked back um to confirm that what he saw was an animal or a human.
You
And
know
in
what? Good on
fact,
that truck driver too. The fact of the matter is that he didn't know if it was an animal or if it was a body, and instead of just not worrying about it, stopped and to investigate the
mhm.
situation. You know, that's that's a good human being right there. That is
Well, and
that is
he
a good human.
I believe he says to the 911 operator, "We got to protect this. This is a crime scene." Like he just instinctively from looking at it thought this is not your normal car accident.
No.
Um there was another call I think prior to that one. Um I can't remember. There were a couple calls. There was one prior that was very vague and they didn't leave a name and they hung up and and the person said, "This is really strange. There's a car and the lights are on and it's like they're doing something. I don't know. It doesn't look good. Like it's a really random. This doesn't look good kind of 911 call and it was short and they just kept driving like they didn't stop and give any description of anything. And
Yeah.
then when they asked for the name, they hung up. So and then he called the nice truck driver. He called after that and then was able to um, secure the scene basically.
Yeah, as much as
um,
he could.
yep, and a couple others too until the cops could get there to make a proper barricade around her. um, and I think they ended up closing obviously the whole highway because
Oh yeah, definitely.
there
Like
was stuff
there's gonna
everywhere.
be no in and out. Yeah.
But it's crazy because I was on my way to Virginia one weekend, and I had listened to several podcasts, and there's actually some that are really good and very detailed about time stamps and some of the information. And like I said, you can find it all on her um,
On the
on
Facebook
the
thing.
Facebook page. She's put everything up there. So I was I was binging on the podcast just to get information and to see if there were any inconsistencies or anything like that. And um, it's just fascinated quite a few people. Well, and on the way home, like that is the road I take home when I come home from Virginia. And so I literally pass the mile marker that they saw her car, I believe, was at the mile marker 181.4, I think it was. And it's kind of eerie now, to drive by it and see that the gas station, I think it's a BP now, I think. I've actually stopped at that one with my kids because I was like, oh, we're gonna run out of gas.
Sorry, that just got down to the point I couldn't hold my pee anymore. I was trying so
That's
hard.
okay. That's all right.
Because, it's not a podcast unless Wyatt takes the bathroom break.
That's right. My cat butt is sleeping in the pet smart box, which I think is hilarious. So I was taking pictures. I'm gonna see if I can go back and find them. But I was taking pictures as I was driving by. I was like tick, 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 taking pictures, and I was just baffled by the fact that this poor girl was probably, scared, and she's out in the middle of nowhere. Um, and to then drive by it and see everything really, really kind of puts it in perspective. Um, and you know, I be- I have a fascination with these cases that do get caught doing something kind of random like this. A lot of it is I panicked. I didn't know what to do. I accidentally killed someone for whatever reason, and I panicked. And then they just go way overboard, like people chopping up bodies and
Yeah.
scattering their body parts. It's like, how do you go from accidentally killing someone to scattering their body parts and chopping them up? Like, I get with the accident part, but the planning to cover up things, I think, will eat away at whoever has done it. And regardless of if they're caught and brought to justice or not, they will suffer their own um, punishment. Because there's no way that I could, if it were me, cause this accident, this death of someone, and go to the lengths that somebody's gone to cover it up. I just can't see how she could sustain the injuries that she sustained, that the mess that was made could have been made just from her hitting a guardrail and flying out of her passenger seat window. And, it's just, they didn't. I asked about phone records because you would think that you could see whose phone might have been pinging, around the highway. Because that was also, I think, how they figured out that her phone was on the highway when she called. So why
It
why when
all depends on if they have their GPS location on.
But I don't think that they even subpoenaed or requested phone records from the kids' phones that were
Well, no,
supposed.
because they initially had it set that it was an accident. So of course they're not going to subpoena anything. They're not going to push anything. If the police basically they have it in record, like that is like the indecision, like and that it was they all came down to a conclusion that it was alcohol induced accident. They're not going to push that any further.
But they did 16 months of investigating what then? You know
Just
what I mean?
basically taking statements. I mean that's all they did is basically they just took statements of people. And it's the thing is, and it's a shitty thing, and it's kind of a conspiracy outlook onto this. There's no solid. So like you said, like during that time, um, you know the uh, the other people that she was with that night all were relatives of former um, police officers that worked
Mm-hmm.
for the county. And that's the shitty thing is that, and when you go into the conspiracy side of it, but you can't ever rule it out. We've seen it happen before
Mm-hmm.
that, that the corruption within, the police departments and everything like that, you definitely see it in small towns, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
if, you know, the sheriff of a or chief of the police department's kid gets in trouble for any way whatsoever, you know, depending on the morals of that officer, they're going to do everything they can to sweep it underneath the rug so this doesn't look good. So, and they call in favors.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's one of those things is I hope it's not true that this situation didn't happen this way, but you can't rule out the possibility that it could have been just a cover up. They could have you know these relatives could have reached out for favors to kind of sweep it underneath of the rug so that way it didn't ruin the individual's lives,
Mm-hmm.
but it still ruins one person's lives. It ruins a family's life. I mean, this poor
Mm-hmm.
lady is going on over a decade right now with no resolution. The family has no resolution over a decade.
And Tabi actually is not in the area anymore. She moved out west somewhere and has a baby, and so
Aw.
her mom doesn't want to leave this area without resolution for Jaleayah, because she feels like if she's not here in the area to push to have change made on the case and justice for Jaleayah, that it'll just be forgotten. So she's chosen, to stay in this area.
And to fight the
Um,
fight.
and yeah, while her daughter is elsewhere raising her granddaughter. Um, so people don't realize with the things that they do that the ripple effect of the impact isn't just the one that you're, the first layer of person that you're uh doing the whatever it is to. It's a ripple effect. If they have family, if they have kids, friends, and maybe their friends' families, depending on how close you all are, there's just a ripple effect to the community and to their family and friends that just is irreparable. And they'll want justice.
And
In
they're
any
not going to heal
case,
from it until they get some form of closure.
right?
And it won't. I mean, because it just nothing adds up to where this is just an accident.
No.
Like it does not add up in any aspect whatsoever that you know that it was an accident. Like there's no way that if there is such minimum damage to the vehicle on the side of it hitting the guardrail, there's no way that she was fucking flown out of that vehicle from the driver's side outside of the passenger side door and then somehow, some way, ended up on top of the vehicle. No, I'm sorry. If that was the case, if what would have happened in that scenario is that if she hit the window, her body would have caught the guardrail, and in that aspect, her body would have ended up on the other side of the guardrail or hanging onto the guardrail.
Or you would think.
Yeah,
Well, and that's the
like
thing. Like, there was no accident reconstruction or anything to be like, can we logistically somehow make this possibly happen, where a person driving without, crash dummy or whatever, is driving without a seatbelt on, hits a guardrail at the same angle, and launches itself out the window,
wouldn't even
then
bring you need to
up
bring in a
on.
crash dummy. All you need to do is it's like you can do a computer simulation of that easily.
Oh,
All
they
you need
probably
is just
can now, yeah.
yeah, all you need is just like a physicist to jump in onto that, and you easily can get an answer onto it. Like there, and on top of it, like okay, hear me out. Okay,
Right?
so you're driving, all right? I'm sorry. In any aspect of the matter is that one, there's no way you're gonna fly out of it. There's too much stuff in the car that's you're gonna catch on to from the driver's seat to the passenger seat and fling you out. You're in a sitting position. Your legs are gonna get locked in place before that happens.
Mm-hmm. Like, how do your legs get up out under? Uh,
Yeah. Like I could understand going out of, not wearing a seatbelt and going out of the front windshield. If your airbags are not working in the vehicle, that I can understand completely. Seen
huh.
that happen before. You know, that's that's completely plausible. But never have I ever seen anything plausible to where somebody is driving and skidded across a guardrail and flew out the fucking passenger window. My God.
Right. Yeah, the windshield, maybe the windshield on the opposite side, possibly,
Yeah.
but I I
I don't know. This
don't
is
get
definitely
it.
one to rack your brain on too. Definitely, if you guys
Yes.
are interested in the case, please take a look at the Facebook um, link that I'm going to post in the description. And like I said, like, if you guys are interested in the case, if you live close to the area, or, even if we have like, any, private investigators that are listening to this podcast and you guys feel like, you want to dive into it, please, take a look at the case, see if you can get anything more out of it, to be able to kind of come up with something to help give this family some closure because they need it,
Mhm.
hands down. They definitely need it. And I know here on our end, like we'll do whatever we possibly can. We're not professionals in this space. Basically, we dig and we come up with, our conclusions, our speculations, but obviously, like we have no solid evidence of anything, just speculations. These are our opinions on the matter. Um, you take it or leave it, but definitely our hearts go out to this family.
Mhm.
You guys
For
have been
sure.
through enough, and I hope, if anything, it's a long time coming, but I hope that this family gets justice soon, so that way they can finally move on from this grief and get the closure that they need.
Yes, and if anybody knows anything, clear your conscience. come forward and share what you know and
Yeah,
help give this family some peace that they deserve. Because they
absolutely.
really do deserve closure and peace, and to move on. And you know what? If you know something and you're carrying it around, you do too. It's time to let it
Yeah,
go.
not only do you owe it to the family, but you owe it to yourself too. Because I can't imagine, like, if you're walking around living guilt free, then you're a horrible person. Like, there's if this is not weighing on your soul, like, I'm sorry, but you are just bad people. So, and I don't want to think that. I really don't. I want to think that this was just there was no ill intent behind this or anything. Just scared kids. Just
Yep.
scared kids didn't know what to do. And you
And
know,
it was
that's
an accident.
easier.
It was an
That
accident. Whatever it
yes,
was not
it's
wasn't
easier
intended.
to accept the fact that it was no ill intent, that a bad thing happened, you freaked out, than it is to think about somebody just not even worrying about what happened to this young girl that they had a hand into and just going about their life with no
Right.
justice being brought to them. But again, you know, it sucks. I mean, it's going to keep me up tonight for sure. Hands down, just thinking
Let
about
me just
this.
tell you, I obsessed for several weeks over
Oh, I
this
know. I know
case,
when
and
you brought it to my attention the first time, wanting to do the topic onto it. It was before we took our hiatus. So you've definitely been sitting on this for a while. But hopefully there's a conclusion to it. But with
yes,
that, we're gonna let you guys pick your brains. Um,
yes,
see what conclusions you guys come up with. Uh, we definitely would love to hear about them. Whatever, speculations that you guys have on the matter, you know, definitely would love to hear about it. What you guys think what you guys think happened and
mm-hmm.
what you guys believe. There's no wrong answers. You won't be judged for any aspect of your
No,
things. I'll tell you that right now. Like I said, our opinions are our opinions. Your opinions are your opinions. We will not judge you for whatever your opinions are. So if you agree with us, that's fine. If you don't agree with us, that's fine as well.
yeah, that's what makes the world go round, and actually, that's sometimes what ends up making things happen is people talking and thinking and going outside the box, and
Exactly.
sometimes things get solved that
And
way.
that's called a healthy debate.
That's right. That's right. Somebody to say, have you ever thought about blah blah? Oh, maybe they
Yeah.
haven't. So check it out. Let us know what you think. If you have anything interesting you'd like us to bring attention to, please hit us up.
Please.
Let us know. We'd love to look into something and
To chitty
talk
chat
about
about it.
it, bring up some interest to it.
I love the chitty chat about it.
Yes, yes, and see if we can't make a difference. I don't know if we can or not, but not
I
talking
mean,
about it certainly isn't
yeah,
going to help.
it's not. I mean, even if us just posting this podcast and all that stuff adds a little bit more ears onto the case and all that stuff, all the more better. All
Yep.
the more people that know about this, the better. Because eventually it's going to hit the right ear, and then the right person is going to get involved in this, and that person is going to be able to help this family. And that is what we hope for.
Yes, because they deserve it.
Absolutely.
Honestly, they deserve
But
peace.
with that, guys, hopefully you guys have a good rest of your day, night, whatever where time you're listening to this. I don't know. You could be listening to it in the morning. Good morning.
Good
Nice to see
morning.
you.
Thank
But
you.
as always, is somebody hasn't told you today, I love you. We
You're the
love you,
best.
and we're proud of you.
Keep doing you.
Peace out, Girl Scouts.
Woo woo. Yeah.